Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When ex-military Danny Block returns to his peaceful mountain cabin, he finds 3 armed men trying to break in, claiming HOA authority over land he owns free and clear. What starts as trespassing spirals into a ruthless battle of fraud, corruption, and one man's fight to keep what's his. The gravel popped under my tires as we rounded the last bend before the house, and for a second, everything felt just right. The scent of ponderosa pines, that golden evening hue over the ridgeline, the subtle vibration of the engine humming through the wheel. This was why I kept coming back to this damn place. My mountain retreat, my sanctuary, built with my own 2 hands and a hell of a lot of sweat. But that feeling snapped like a dry branch the moment my headlights swept over a black SUV parked sideways at the front gate. No plates, no markings, just sitting there like it owned the road. At first, I thought it was a delivery gone wrong or some tourists lost trying to find a hiking trail. But then I saw them. 3 guys, all built like they moonlight as nightclub bouncers, in black shirts with Aspen Ridge HOA Patrol screen printed across the back in bold white letters. One of them had a crowbar wedged under the edge of my front door. Another was fiddling with a radio. The third looked like he was on lookout. None of them noticed us right away. I slammed the brakes hard enough to jolt the gear shift. "What the hell?" I muttered, already throwing the truck into park. In the back seat, Rico leaned forward with a quiet grunt. Michael, ever the calm one, was already unclipping his seatbelt like he was about to step into formation. I opened the driver's door and stepped out, voice loud and sharp. "Hey, what the hell are you doing to my house?" All 3 turned at once. The one with the crowbar didn't even flinch. "You're not authorized to be here," he barked back, like he was reading off a script. "This property falls under Aspen Ridge HOA jurisdiction. You didn't clear occupancy in advance. We're conducting a structural inspection." I blinked. "Are you kidding me?" I walked toward them, slow but deliberate. "This is private property, not under HOA jurisdiction. You have no right to be here." He took a step closer, broad shoulders, shaved head, the kind of guy who thought intimidation was a leadership style. "You either vacate the premises or there will be consequences." The sentence was still echoing when I heard the creak of both passenger doors behind me. Footsteps. Controlled. Calm. Michael and Rico stepped forward like goddamn Grim Reapers in flannel and denim. Michael pulled out his phone and started recording immediately. Rico, hands behind his back, tilted his head and asked, "Do you gentlemen have a warrant?" The 3 men exchanged glances. The one in the middle, the self-declared alpha, stiffened. "No warrant," I added. "Then you're breaking and entering. And if you so much as sneeze in my direction, I'll add assault to the list." The third guy, lookout, fidgeted. I could see it in his eyes. They hadn't expected resistance. Certainly not 3 veterans rolling up with cameras, squared shoulders, and unimpressed expressions. The guy with the radio raised his hand. "We were following HOA orders." "That's it," I snorted. "HOA doesn't mean jack out here. This land is outside your little fantasy republic. I bought it through the Veteran Land Access Program. Fully registered, fully zoned, fully mine. You're trespassing." The bald guy stepped forward again, like he thought I might flinch. "You don't understand who you're dealing with." Michael spoke for the first time, calm and dry. "Oh, I think we do." And then, as if the situation wasn't tense enough, the guy with the crowbar gritted his teeth and lunged. I didn't even have time to react. Rico intercepted him mid-step, twisted his wrist with surgical precision, and put him down on the gravel like folding a chair. The man hit the ground with a shocked grunt, arm twisted behind his back. "Bad move," Rico muttered, tightening the hold. Michael stepped in between me and the second guy, who now looked a lot less sure of himself. He raised his hands instinctively, dropping the crowbar with a clatter. The third guy turned to bolt back to the SUV, but I pulled the panic remote from my pocket and hit the button. The gate swung shut behind him with a deep mechanical clang. The chain lock clicked in, red light blinking. "No one's going anywhere," I said. "Congratulations, you're all going to wait here and explain this to the sheriff." Michael kept filming as the guy on the ground started yelling, "This is a misunderstanding. Karen told us it was abandoned." Rico raised an eyebrow. Karen Truman," the second guy added quickly, still standing with his hands up. "She's the president. She said this house was technically unclaimed." I laughed once, short and sharp. "Unclaimed my ass." I walked to my truck, grabbed the emergency sat phone from the glove box, and called the Gila County Sheriff's Office. I gave them the exact coordinates, described the situation in blunt detail, and told them we had the whole thing on video, including the attempted break-in and physical assault. The dispatcher said deputies would be on the way within 15 minutes. I leaned against the hood of the truck, arms crossed, eyes locked on the trespassers like a man watching coyotes get stuck in their own trap. No one spoke for a few beats. Only the wind through the trees and the faint chirping of the motion-activated cameras echoing from under the roof eaves. I almost felt bad for them. Almost. The guy Rico had on the ground kept struggling like a hooked trout, but he wasn't getting anywhere. Every time he twisted, Rico adjusted the hold just enough to remind him he was in the grip of someone who'd once disarmed a Taliban soldier with a soup spoon. The second guy, the one who dropped the crowbar, started inching backward until Michael looked at him and calmly said, "I wouldn't." That was enough. The guy froze like a guilty teenager caught sneaking in past curfew. I stood by the truck, hand still on the panic remote, watching this circus unfold in the middle of my damn yard. This was supposed to be a quiet weekend. Whiskey, smoke, maybe a poker game under the stars. Not a live-action HOA reenactment of Waco Light. "Let him go," the third guy shouted, stepping forward with sudden false courage. "You're assaulting an officer." Rico didn't even look up. "You're not officers. You're thugs in polyester. You're gonna get sued for this." The guy barked, chest puffed, voice cracking with just a little too much panic underneath the bluster. I stepped forward and snapped, "You tried to break into my house. That's a felony. You threatened me. That's another one. Touch me again, and I swear to God, the only thing you'll be suing is the prison vending machine for bad coffee." The tension crackled. The guy's eyes darted to the closed gate, the locked SUV, the forest around us. He looked like he finally understood he was surrounded, and no one was coming to save him. Then, like clockwork, the shrill buzz of tires on gravel signaled the arrival of the cavalry. 2 Gila County Sheriff's deputies pulled up in a dust-covered Ford Explorer, lights flashing but sirens silent. A man and a woman got out, both tan uniforms, both calm and professional. The male deputy walked up first, eyes scanning the scene like he'd seen 100 variations of this before, and none of them surprised him anymore. "Evening," he said. "Someone called about a break-in?" "That was me," I said. "Danny Block. This is my property. These men were caught trying to force entry with a crowbar. I have them on camera, and I've got 2 witnesses. They claim to be with some HOA that doesn't have jurisdiction out here." The female deputy walked up to the guy on the ground. "Sir, you need to release him." Rico looked up, expression cool as ever. "Deputy, this man initiated physical contact and attempted assault. I used the minimal necessary force to detain him. You're welcome to take over." The male deputy nodded at Rico. "Go ahead and step back. We'll take it from here." Rico released his grip and stood, brushing gravel off his jeans. The guy he'd been holding groaned and rolled over, rubbing his shoulder. "Names," the female deputy said, looking at the trio. "Scott," muttered the one from the ground. "That's Jake, and that's Tyler." The male deputy frowned. "You with Aspen Ridge HOA?" "Yes," Jake blurted. "Karen Truman sent us. We were instructed to inspect the property. Do you have identification?" None of them moved. "Bad sign," the deputy said, exhaling. "Let me see your credentials, orders, any paperwork authorizing you to be here." Still nothing. Just 3 blinking meatheads caught playing lawman in the wrong jurisdiction. Michael stepped forward, holding up his phone. "We've got footage from the moment we pulled up." They were actively prying the front door. "No ID, no badges, no warrant." "Sir," the deputy said to me, "you mentioned surveillance footage." I nodded and pulled up the live feed from the cabin security system on my phone. Front porch, wide shot. One of the guys literally jamming the crowbar into the doorframe. Time-stamped, clear as day. I hit play. The deputy watched for a few seconds and whistled. "All right," he muttered. "That's enough for me." Within minutes, the 3 were being read their rights. The looks on their faces ranged from dazed to outright pissed. Tyler, the loudest of the bunch, started yelling about how we were violating federal code and sovereign HOA boundaries. The deputies just ignored him. While they were being loaded into the Explorer, the female deputy walked over to me. "Mr. Block, we're going to need formal statements from all 3 of you. You available to come into the station tomorrow?" "Absolutely," I said. She nodded, glanced at the house. "Nice place, by the way. Shame about the company." I smirked. "That's why I live up here." To avoid company, they drove off a few minutes later with 3 angry fools in the back. The dust settled behind their taillights, and the silence of the forest crept back in. Rico broke it first. "Still want to grill steaks?" "Hell yes," I said, turning toward the house. "But first, I'm changing the damn locks. The sheriff's office in Gila County isn't exactly a fortress. It's a modest tan stucco building next to a feed store and a diner that still sells coffee for under $2. But that morning, walking in with Rico and Michael behind me, it felt like the Capitol steps. We were met by Deputy Harper, the woman from last night, who waved us past the front desk with a tired smile, like she'd already filed this entire incident under Bullshit Volume 7. We gave our statements one by one in a back room with wood-paneled walls and an old oscillating fan that clicked every few seconds like it was on the verge of mechanical suicide. I went first. I walked them through everything. When we arrived, what we saw, what was said, who did what. I handed over the full security footage, the time-stamped files from the cabin system, the GPS log from the gate triggers. They didn't just have video. They had metadata, elevation, timestamps. I wasn't just covering my ass. I was filing a goddamn thesis. Michael and Rico gave their statements next, methodical and military in their delivery. No dramatics. Just cold, hard recollection. Rico even sketched a diagram of who stood where, what time he intervened, the hold he used, and how long it lasted. The deputies looked mildly horrified. I wasn't sure if it was from the accuracy or the casual mention of joint manipulation. After an hour, we were done. But as we were getting ready to leave, Deputy Harper stopped us. "Hold up a second." One of the suspects. He asked to talk. We followed her down a short hall to an interview room with a grimy window and a table bolted to the floor. Inside sat Jake, the middle guy. No longer cocky. No more bark. Just a big man in a cheap polo shirt who looked like he'd realized that jailhouse bologna sandwiches don't come with HOA dental. He looked up as we entered and muttered, "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know it was going to be like that." I stayed quiet. "She told us," he continued, voice cracking, "that the house was unoccupied, that it had been sitting abandoned, that the owner lived in Phoenix and hadn't been seen in months." Rico narrowed his eyes. "And that justified breaking in with a crowbar." Jake winced. "She said if we cleared it out and took inventory, the HOA could file a vacancy claim. Said it was legal under Arizona property abandonment laws." I felt my jaw tighten. I knew damn well what he was talking about. There were obscure statutes on adverse possession and property claims, but none of them applied here. Not with a registered deed, active surveillance, and recent utility usage. She said once it was declared vacant, they could claim it as part of an HOA expansion plan. Jake continued. "They've done it before." That stopped me. "What do you mean they've done it before?" I asked. He glanced at the mirror on the wall like he wasn't sure who else was listening. "There were 2 other properties up in the North Ridge. Seasonal cabins. Owners only came once or twice a year. She said those were easy targets. We inspected them, then filed false vacancy notices, claimed they were abandoned, voted them into the HOA at the board meeting. Nobody contested it. The owners didn't even know, and you thought mine would be next," I muttered. Jake nodded slowly. "She told us you bought it with veteran credits. Said no one would question it if we move fast." Deputy Harper was standing in the corner, her notebook untouched. "That's enough," she said firmly. "We'll need a formal deposition." Jake looked at her. "I'll sign whatever. I didn't sign up for this kind of shit." Outside the room, Harper pulled me aside. "We're escalating this," she said. "We've already contacted the county assessor and registrar. If what he said is true, they've been filing fraudulent land integration paperwork." I nodded, but my hands were balled into fists at my sides. "Can I get copies of everything he just said?" "You'll need to file through your attorney," she replied. "But yes, and if I were you, I'd lawyer up fast, because this thing..." She glanced back toward the room. "This isn't just trespassing anymore." She was right. By the time we got back to the cabin, the weight of it was sinking in. This wasn't some isolated HOA stunt gone rogue. This was a deliberate pattern, a mechanism to absorb land, claim it, and smother the rightful owners under paperwork and lies. I sat on the deck that evening, bottle of whiskey on the table, Michael flipping through legal forms on his tablet, Rico cleaning his knife like it was Sunday Mass. She said they already took 2 properties. I said, "How many more?" Michael didn't look up. Probably depends how many people didn't show up in time. I took a long pull from the bottle. I was here now. And they'd picked the wrong house this time. It didn't take long for the counterattack to begin. By Monday morning, my inbox was flooding with alerts from news aggregators, and my phone buzzed with push notifications. One of the local papers had published a headline that made my blood boil. Armed veterans storm HOA inspection. Officers assaulted in remote property dispute. The article was loaded with thinly veiled bias, painting me and my friends as rogue militia types who'd violently interrupted a routine safety assessment on HOA land. No mention of crowbars. No mention of trespassing, just a neat little rewrite of reality, fed directly from Karen Truman's PR pipeline. I stared at the byline, contributed by anonymous source close to Aspen Ridge HOA board. Michael looked over my shoulder, expression unreadable. She's trying to control the narrative. Yeah, I muttered, and it's working. That same afternoon, my lawyer, Gavin Morris, a real estate litigator from Phoenix with the charm of a python and the memory of an AI, called me with updates. He'd received the official police reports along with the footage we submitted. He was already prepping a civil suit, but he had more. They tried to file a code violation notice against your property this morning, he said. Filed under the HOA authority with the county office, claims of structural decay, non-compliant fencing, improper septic tank clearance. All nonsense, of course. I almost laughed. I installed that septic system myself. It passed inspection last year. He didn't laugh. They're trying to build a case. Public nuisance, code violations, whatever sticks. It's a classic move. Bury you under procedural mud. That evening, 2 inspectors showed up at the cabin. One was from the fire department. The other was an environmental compliance officer from the county. Both seemed slightly embarrassed to be there. The fire inspector read from a clipboard, explaining they'd received a tip that the property was at high risk of wildfire damage due to uncontrolled brush and hazardous debris. I showed them the cleared fire break I'd cut last fall, the raked perimeter, the metal roof. The environmental officer asked if I had records of my water usage and gray water runoff. I walked her to the generator shed and showed her the satellite-regulated filtration tank I'd installed with licensed contractors, invoice still laminated and pinned to the wall. They both left 30 minutes later, murmuring apologies. Back inside, I checked the security logs and found something else. The day before the break-in, someone had accessed the county zoning office website using an IP address registered to Aspen Ridge HOA. There was a request logged for boundary overlay maps and land development drafts around the northern ridge, including my parcel. I sent the screenshot to Gavin. He called me 10 minutes later. They're laying the groundwork for a hostile annexation, he said. If they can convince the board your land is within their development plan and unclaimed or under dispute, they can try to motion it into HOA jurisdiction with a sham vote. They can't do that, I snapped. They can try, he said calmly. And unless we stop them fast, they might succeed. The next morning, I got another call, this time from a woman named Laura Donovan. I used to work for Karen, she said. Her voice was low, cautious. In the HOA office. I resigned 2 months ago. I saw your name on the news. You need to know what's really happening. She agreed to meet that afternoon in a small diner off the highway. Laura was in her early 40s, sharp eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses, and a stack of folders tucked in her bag. She laid them out one by one like weapons on a table. Karen's been planning this for months, she said. There's a whole map in the office with properties marked red and green. Red means acquired. Green means targeted. Your parcel was marked green a month ago. After 2 successful absorptions, Karen thought she had a method. Use vacancy claims, file falsified inspections, then vote the land in during HOA board meetings with no outside witnesses. And the county never checks? I asked. They file under the radar. Most people don't contest because they never find out. Or if they do, they're buried under fines, zoning violations, and legal fees until they cave. She handed me a photocopy of an internal email. It was short and brutal. Parcel N42 ready for next phase. Initiate access protocol before Friday. Push visual deterioration narrative. K Parcel N42 was my land. She expected you wouldn't be home, Laura said quietly. She was furious when she heard the sheriff arrested her guys. That's why she's pushing this public narrative. She's trying to flip it before it spirals. It was spiraling already. That night, Michael uploaded a full cut of our arrival and the confrontation, 4 uninterrupted minutes of footage, time stamped, no edits. We added security cam overlays, date confirmations, audio logs. It spread fast. Local forums, then Reddit, then Twitter. A retired police officer in the comments broke down the laws they violated. A property rights blog picked it up. Then a local radio station reached out asking for an interview. Karen, of course, doubled down. She released a formal statement through the HOA's attorney claiming we doctored footage, that threats were made against unarmed representatives, and that the Aspen Ridge HOA reserves the right to pursue legal recourse against Mr. Block and his accomplices for obstructing civil inspection duties. Accomplices. Rico nearly spit coffee all over the porch when he read that. By the end of the week, Gavin had filed a formal injunction in Gila County Superior Court to block any further HOA action against my property. We submitted Laura's documents, the video footage, the inspection reports, and copies of every HOA-related communication we could scrape from the county site. It wasn't just a land grab anymore. It was fraud, malicious misrepresentation, criminal conspiracy, and we had a paper trail. The courtroom smelled like dust and paper. Gila County Superior Court wasn't some grand marbled hall. It was a modest space with beige walls, a few ceiling fans, and rows of creaky benches that made every shift sound like a groan of protest. But for what was about to go down, it may as well have been Madison Square Garden. We weren't here for the final fight just yet, but this was the first public hit, and Karen Truman had finally stepped into the light. She arrived flanked by two attorneys in navy suits and attitude. One of them wore cufflinks shaped like gavels. I could smell the smug from across the aisle. Gavin sat next to me, calmly organizing his files like he was prepping for a wedding toast. Rico and Michael sat 2 rows back, stone-faced and presentable in clean shirts. Behind them, a few reporters shuffled in with notepads and coffee, including one from the very paper that ran the HOA's spin piece last week. We were here for the temporary injunction hearing, our motion to block any further HOA action against my property until the courts could fully examine the evidence of fraud and trespass. But this wasn't just about paperwork. Karen had chosen to fight, and now she'd have to bleed. The judge, an older man with a thick silver mustache and no time for theatrics, called us to order. Gavin presented first. His delivery was like watching a scalpel in motion, calm, sharp, and precise. He introduced the footage from my cameras, the smartphone video, the inspection records, and then brought out the big guns. The internal HOA documents Laura Donovan had handed over. He read directly from one of them. Initiate access protocol. Push visual deterioration narrative. Claim absentee status. Acquire under emergency compliance vote, the courtroom murmured. Gavin slid the document across to the judge. This isn't a zoning misunderstanding, Your Honor. This is organized property theft dressed up in bureaucracy. Karen's lawyer objected, claimed the document was unauthenticated, possibly fabricated. Gavin raised an eyebrow and handed over a notarized statement from Laura, including her signed affidavit and digital timestamps from the HOA office's email server. Then came the footage, full screen, time-stamped, crystal clear. The judge watched as the 3 men attempted to pry open my front door with a crowbar. He watched Rico subdue one of them without unnecessary force. He watched as deputies arrived and arrested all 3. And he watched one of the men scream that Karen told us to do it. Karen's attorney tried to speak again, but the judge cut him off. Does your client deny authorizing this action? The lawyer hesitated. Karen leaned in and whispered something. The lawyer cleared his throat. She denies any knowledge of an unlawful entry. The individuals in question acted independently, and without official sanction, Gavin didn't even blink. Then why were they wearing HOA-issued shirts, carrying HOA radio frequencies, and listed in the internal correspondence provided by your client? Silence. The judge tapped his pen against the table. What evidence does the HOA provide that Mr. Block's property falls under their jurisdiction? The second attorney, clearly the backup hitter, stood and delivered a map, a printed parcel overlay, annotated in red. We believe this property was intended to fall under the Aspen Ridge HOA's planned expansion zone. As it has not been formally contested until now, we moved forward with procedural absorption under Section 9 of our charter. Gavin stood again. That map, Your Honor, is not part of the county assessor's official records. In fact, we have the real one, county certified, and it clearly shows Mr. Block's land outside HOA boundaries. The map they've submitted was altered. He slid the certified parcel map across the bench. The judge studied it for a moment, then looked back at Karen's legal team. "Do you have any explanation for this discrepancy?" Karen finally spoke, voice tight and artificial. "There was confusion due to recent development zones. Our understanding was that the land was unclaimed." Gavin stepped forward. "Your Honor, my client bought this land through the state's Veteran Land Use Grant Program. He has records, title, utility logs, tax receipts, construction permits, and live residency documentation. Aspen Ridge HOA not only attempted a hostile annexation but initiated a break-in based on falsified assumptions." He turned to Karen. "Or perhaps not assumptions at all." The judge sat back. His eyes swept the room, resting briefly on Karen, then on me. "I've heard enough for today," he said. "Pending full review of submitted evidence and sworn testimony, this court issues an immediate temporary injunction against Aspen Ridge HOA. The organization is barred from taking any further administrative or physical action related to Parcel N, 42, or surrounding properties until final disposition." Karen's lips twitched. Her lawyers stiffened like they'd just swallowed thumbtacks. Court adjourned. Outside the courthouse, a local news crew asked for a statement. Gavin declined. "I didn't. I built that house with my own hands," I said. "I earned that land. No amount of fake maps or power-hungry boards is going to change that. People need to start paying attention to how far some HOAs are willing to go when they think nobody's watching." It hit the local news that night. By morning, the segment had over 60,000 views. A retired judge from Flagstaff reposted it on social media with a single line: "This is no longer a civil matter. This is criminal." For a brief moment, it felt like we had the upper hand. The injunction meant the HOA couldn't touch my land, couldn't file, vote, inspect, or so much as breathe in my direction without court approval. Karen's team had been blindsided, and for the first time since this mess began, I could step onto my porch, drink coffee in the morning, and not wonder which corner of the forest some HOA rent-a-goon might come crawling out of next. But the thing about cornered animals? They bite. It started small, anonymous calls to the county zoning board questioning whether I had permits for my satellite dish. Someone reported my generator as noise pollution. Then a drone buzzed over my house just past midnight, its red lights blinking through the pine branches. It didn't linger long, but I heard it. And I knew exactly where it came from. Gavin filed additional restraining orders. Meanwhile, he pushed the court to expand the investigation from civil to criminal. And that's when the real cracks began to show. Laura Donovan, our inside whistleblower, called one evening, breathless and nervous. "They're shredding things," she said. "Who?" "The HOA board, the office." I drove past after hours and the lights were on. The back door was open. I looked inside. There were bags of files stacked up and one of Karen's assistants feeding them into a shredder. I passed the tip to Deputy Harper. The next day, the sheriff's office issued a preservation of evidence order and raided the HOA office with a warrant. They recovered partial documents from the trash and digital backups from a neglected office server. And that's when the hammer dropped. The recovered files showed dozens of attempts to alter parcel data, including files submitted under false names, altered property maps, and board vote summaries where the same three names appeared repeatedly: Karen, her vice president, and a secretary who no longer lived in the state. Worse, a scanned document bearing a forged signature from the Gila County Recorder's Office, supposedly validating the redrawn HOA boundaries. Only the signature was a dead giveaway. Deputy Harper confirmed the actual official hadn't been in office since 2018. Karen had been faking legal endorsements. The DA's office got involved. A criminal case was formally opened for fraudulent land claims, document forgery, criminal conspiracy, and attempted unlawful annexation. Gavin and I were called into a closed-door meeting with the deputy district attorney. She wore a tan blazer and had the energy of a woman who'd spent the last decade trying to stay ahead of municipal corruption. "This isn't just one guy's property," she said, laying out a stack of reports. "This is a pattern. We have 4 confirmed properties improperly absorbed into the HOA over the last 2 years. All by the same method: claims of vacancy, faked compliance checks, and closed-door board votes using forged records." She flipped the page. "And Mr. Block's case is the first where the owner was present, organized, and had evidence." I blinked. "So you're saying if I hadn't shown up, they'd have taken it," she finished. "And you'd have spent the next year fighting to prove you ever owned it in the first place." That night, I sat outside with Michael and Rico again. The sun was setting behind the hills, casting orange streaks across the tree line. Rico was sharpening a blade on a flat stone. Michael stared into the fire pit, poker in hand. "She's not done," Rico said, voice low. I nodded. "She's bleeding, but not dead." Michael spoke up without looking at me. "That's when they're the most dangerous." He was right. The next morning, a notice appeared on the community bulletin board in Aspen Ridge, an open letter from the HOA signed by Karen. "To our valued residents, a rogue landowner has initiated a smear campaign against our board with the help of radicalized outsiders and forged evidence. We ask for your patience and loyalty as we defend the integrity of our community. We will not be intimidated. We will not be bullied. We will prevail." That same day, my mailbox was smashed in. Someone threw roofing nails across the driveway. My satellite signal dropped for 12 hours, and the service tech said someone had climbed the pole and tampered with the dish manually. Rico started sleeping in the guest cabin with a rifle across his lap. Michael installed 2 extra motion-activated cameras near the trailhead and rigged a small weatherproof speaker to blast the sound of a pump shotgun racking whenever movement was detected. That night, it triggered twice, but nobody stuck around. The indictment came down on a Tuesday. By 10 a.m., Karen Truman was in handcuffs. She was arrested at her home in full view of the Aspen Ridge Board and half the damn neighborhood, still in her bathrobe, screaming about government overreach and fake news conspiracies. The footage made the evening news. One of the deputies had a body cam running, and it showed Karen trying to slam the door on the warrant team and shouting that she was a protected community leader. That went over like a fart in church. The charges were serious: conspiracy to commit fraud, falsification of public records, attempted unlawful annexation of private land, and criminal trespass via third parties. But that wasn't all. One of the patrol guys, Jake, the one who'd cracked in the interview room, had turned state's witness. In exchange for a plea deal, he gave up everything. Voice memos from Karen, internal chat logs, even copies of fake board meeting minutes stored on his phone. The most damning detail? Karen had personally forged signatures on land use petitions. She'd gone so far as to fake approval from a deceased county official to legitimize her annexation scheme. The Gila County DA announced a full investigation into Aspen Ridge HOA as an organization, and within 72 hours, the HOA's charter was suspended pending review. The state HOA Regulatory Board released a rare emergency statement, confirming that the association was under formal inquiry for violations of multiple state and county statutes. I watched it all unfold from my porch. Michael was on the phone with a friend at the Arizona Attorney General's office. Rico was grilling breakfast sausage like it was any other morning, but I couldn't stop pacing. It felt good, sure, but it wasn't over, not yet. Then the mail arrived. An official letter from the Gila County Superior Court. My civil suit had been accelerated in light of compelling evidence and public interest. We had a final hearing date for the injunction and a full damages case. But there was more. The court had frozen the HOA's financial accounts pending the outcome of the criminal trial, and any disbursement or legal maneuvering would require judicial approval. Translation: the HOA was broke, gagged, and bleeding out. But that's when the panic started. Residents from Aspen Ridge began showing up at my property, not angry, confused, nervous. A woman named Valerie, mid-60s, with silver hair and a box of muffins, stood at my gate. "I'm so sorry," she said. We didn't know. Others followed. A contractor who'd done odd jobs for the HOA brought me copies of emails Karen had sent him, orders to board up properties marked as reclaimed. A young couple who'd moved in 6 months ago came with photos showing how one of the other absorbed. Properties had been cleared out overnight while the owner was overseas. It wasn't just about me anymore. This had been systematic. Gavin pushed the court for class action status, and we got it. Now, it wasn't just Block V HOA. It was a coalition of property owners, past and present, who'd been steamrolled, tricked, or intimidated by Karen's fake government. Our claim wasn't just about land. It was about intentional sabotage, defamation, emotional distress, and long-term financial harm. Then came the audit. With the HOA under court-appointed receivership, forensic accountants were brought in. They uncovered unauthorized disbursements, missing funds, and security contracts paid out to unlicensed individuals, including the 3 men who'd broken into my house. 2 of them weren't even from Arizona. One was from Texas and had an active warrant. The third was a dishonorably discharged private contractor from New Mexico. By the end of the week, a federal subpoena was issued for the HOA's financial records over the last 5 years. The local news dubbed it the Karen scandal. Social media ran with it. Memes appeared. Karen photoshopped onto George Washington crossing the Delaware, except she's holding a clipboard that says HOA violation. Another showed her face edited onto a Monopoly board. Go to jail. Do not collect dues. But what stuck with me the most was the hearing room. On Friday afternoon, we all gathered again, this time for a formal review of criminal charges. Karen sat at the defendant's table, pale and shaking. No makeup, hands clenched in her lap. She didn't look like a tyrant anymore, just a desperate woman whose kingdom was turning to ash. The judge read through the indictments. Each one landed like a hammer: attempted annexation, fraudulent claims, false filings, conspiracy, unauthorized surveillance, misuse of public infrastructure. It went on and on. At one point, her attorney stood up and asked the court to consider Karen's emotional state and misunderstanding of jurisdiction. The judge paused, then said flatly, "This wasn't a mistake. It was a machine." He ordered Karen held without bail, pending trial, citing flight risk and obstruction of justice. The courtroom was silent as they led her out in cuffs. I stood in the hallway afterward, leaning against the wall, watching the news crews swarm. Someone handed me a copy of the official court order dissolving Aspen Ridge HOA as a legal entity. Effective immediately, all assets were to be transferred to county control. Gavin walked up beside me. "You just watched an empire collapse." "No," I said. "I watched someone try to become an empire and fail." 3 months later, the mountains were quiet again. The courtroom noise, the reporters, the helicopters, the flashing lights. It had all faded. Karen Truman was behind bars, sentenced to 12 years without parole. 2 of her board members took plea deals. The third vanished. Last I heard, the feds were still looking. Aspen Ridge HOA no longer existed. The county had taken control of its remaining assets and launched an oversight committee to prevent anything like this from happening again. But none of that really mattered to me as much as this. I still had my home. The land, the trees, the wind off the ridge, it was all still mine, untouched. And finally, quiet. Michael and Rico returned for one last weekend before summer ended. We didn't talk about courtrooms or lawsuits. We grilled steaks, drank too much bourbon, and argued about who cheated at cards. Rico won every hand and swore it was luck. It wasn't. At some point, we wandered back to the same porch where it all began. The gate was reinforced now, with upgraded sensors and steel posts. I added more cameras, a perimeter alarm, and a solar-powered floodlight system that could fry a raccoon at 50 feet. Michael pointed at the new private property. No trespassing sign. "Think they'll get the message this time," I smirked. "They'd better." The stars came out one by one, and the night fell with that heavy, peaceful silence only the mountains know. No radios, no crowbars, no HOA clipboards. Just old friends, the smell of firewood, and a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months. The next morning, we had coffee on the deck. Michael read a news alert on his phone. My case had made it into a legal newsletter. The headline read, "Veteran wins landmark suit against rogue HOA. $290,000 awarded. Systemic reform begins." Not a bad legacy, all things considered. I donated part of the settlement to start a small nonprofit, Landwatch AZ, a group helping private landowners fight back against HOA abuse, zoning scams, and property fraud. Gavin even offered to sit on the advisory board, said he was tired of suing developers and wanted to hunt bigger game. The rest of the money, I reinvested in the land, cleared a second trail, built a guest cabin, and planted apple trees along the western ridge. Something about roots, about permanence, felt right. As for Karen, I didn't think about her much anymore. The court would deal with her. The system finally worked. But every now and then, I'd see something on the news. Another HOA scandal, another forged map, and I'd wonder how close someone else was to losing everything they built. Maybe next time they'd fight back, like I did.